Good afternoon, everyone. It's so nice to see you in here. Thank you for joining this panel session on the power of networking. My name's Ellie Rowley, and I am really pleased to be hosting this session. My job at NatWest is called Regional Ecosystem Manager, which, amongst many other hats that I wear, means that I lead our accelerator programme here in Bristol and connect those entrepreneurs on programme to various useful contacts that I know, and help them guide them through the ever-changing business support landscape, which can be quite difficult to navigate. Some might even call me the Black Book of NatWest. Some people in the room might have heard me say that before, but network is critical, really, really critical to my work. And I'd like to welcome up my two distinguished panelists. Ollie, Fran, would you like to make your way up, please? So first up, Fran Lewcroft, founding CEO of ethical and sustainable period care brand Grace and Green. And we also have Ollie Reed, who is a renowned business coach, scale acceleration manager at NatWest, who over a decade has supported thousands, literally thousands, of leaders and helped build our incredible community at the Accelerator. So thank you both for joining. Networking is a critical compound of entrepreneurial success, as we've heard from so many people over the last couple of days. It opens doors to opportunities, it helps you access really valuable resources and builds relationships that helps you ultimately build your business to grow. Quite literally defined as interacting with others to exchange information and develop professional or social contacts. So this session feels like it comes at a very good time because you've spent at least a day, if not 2 days, doing exactly that. So I'd like you to take this moment to be able to reflect on how effective you think your networking has been over the last day or so. In fact, you could go a week, you could go a month, you could go a year, you could go your entire year. Just take a moment to think about that. In this session, we'll explore how networking can transform an entrepreneur's journey, the role of the ecosystem, so the support network, in transforming that and facilitating those conversations, and tips for leveraging your network effectively. So hopefully you'll find this quite a practical session. But first up, I think it's important to talk about the elephant in the room. Some people, possibly some people even in this room, get that feeling when we talk about networking, which probably makes you stiffen up slightly. And I think it's fair to say we've all been there when you turn up to a networking event on your own and you start looking around, hoping that you'll catch someone's eye, walking over nervously to the coffee station to hope you spark up a conversation. And all of a sudden, before you know it, you're stuck with someone longer than you probably anticipated. And so it is one of those moments where people do struggle. So first question to my lovely panel. Do you like networking? And I'll come over and join you. Ollie, let's come to you first.
I hate networking. I'm what would be called a wall hugger. I will find the nearest wall and spend as much time next to it as I possibly can. Yeah, more on that in a moment.
I'm with Ollie. I absolutely hate it as well. And likewise, I think I have to really psych myself up to go into any room. And I've just been reflecting a bit yesterday, actually, on this, because I pushed my poor daughter into a ukulele class after school, and she looked absolutely terrified. I think there's about 25 kids in there, and I was like, "You'll be fine." But actually, I would never have gone in there myself. So, yeah, cool.
Yeah, it's interesting because networking is such a key part to my job, and I actually quite like it. People is my thing. I love it, and I think sometimes you just have to think about it in a slightly different way. If you go back to that definition that I said, it sounds quite sterile actually in terms of like just meeting people and speaking to them, and I like finding out what makes people tick and then taking it up a level as to how I can then actually use my skills to be able to help them. And selfishly, I think about it as building my own personal boardroom. The more people I meet who inspire me, who drive me forward in what I'm doing and can help me on my journey. And I have people who Ollie probably being one of them, who is a challenger of me. He'll say, oh, Ellie, why are you doing it that way? But I will go to him for those situations, and I'm trying to tick those boxes of various people to be able to try to help. So we'll come to you, Ollie, because as a coach, you're a master of mindset. And so I think it's an important place for us to start in terms of what the mindset is when we go into networking. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, no problem. So I actually remember, obviously, as Ellie said, I've worked with hundreds of businesses, thousands of entrepreneurs over the years. And I remember getting this email into my inbox from one of our alumni entrepreneurs saying, Ollie, I'm running this event and it's on networking. Will you come and deliver something on it? And I sat there thinking, I hate networking. Like, why are you asking me of all people? Why me? And I kind of sat there and thought, well, why do I hate networking? And I realised it's not networking I hate, it's the word networking and the connotations that come with it, and that feeling of being the wall hugger that's, scooting around the outside. And when I thought about it, similar to what Ellie said, networking is about meeting people, it's about listening to stories, it's about finding about who they are and what they do. And quite often when we go to networking, what we ask is, what do you do? And actually, I care less about what you do and I care more about who you are. And that's what lights me up. So when I go to networking now, the first question I ask is, what are you passionate about? Who are you as a person, and why are you doing what you're doing? And I think that's changed the narrative for me with networking. And what I've realised is actually I'm a cracking networker. Not because I'm necessarily the one in the middle of the room, but I'm the one building relationships and finding out about people. And where I see opportunities, I can connect people. And the more I've kind of reflected on this session today, I sat at the front here, and Charlie Bigham was on earlier talking about, giving food and waste and things like that. And one of the businesses we support is the Marzi Project. So straight away I'm on LinkedIn saying, Mel, I think you need to talk to this chap. And then Neighbourly was on, connecting corporates to charities, straight in the messages again. And so I think what I've realised about networking is not always about being in the centre of the room. It's about building really nice relationships, understanding who people are and what they enjoy, and then finding the opportunities to connect people in at the right time.
Yeah, I think it's a really valuable way of reframing it. And from your perspective then, helping so many entrepreneurs, how critical do you think networking is, especially in those earlier stages? And secondly, second question is, how do you think that changes, the business need changes as you start to scale?
Yeah, I think the first part is I don't think many business owners and entrepreneurs really appreciate how important network is. And that sounds like a really strange thing to say, because actually when you speak to people, they understand that no person is an island and that it takes a community to build a business and all of these catchphrases that we know about. Yet you see people and they're quite insular, they're keeping it to themselves, they're not out there talking to people. So I think it's absolutely pivotal to have, like you said, the black book. And what we see actually is that when you can work with people that are 2 steps in front or 2 steps behind and share that wealth of knowledge, that's where actually most of the business growth comes from. And what I've realised over the years is that, you look at the statistics around business success or business failure, many businesses fail. And you can almost be sure it's the ones that aren't well networked, haven't got the black book, didn't reach out for support, and haven't built allyships that can help them move forwards. I think the other thing, Ellie, as well, is that when we think about how entrepreneurs develop their communities, and I use the word community instead of network, it's because I think when we think about network, we always think about what can somebody else do for me, rather than what can I do for somebody else. Whereas actually part of that community ethos is actually, can I go and add value to someone else's journey? And at some point, can I add value back? And I think that going into it with a different mindset is really important as well. So yeah, when I think about networking, especially in environments like this, I've been here for half of today, already met somebody that can be a speaker for us, somebody that might join the program, and you go, if I go away with those 2 or 3 connections, that's a really cracking return. Not only have I learned something, but I've built some really, really positive connections as well.
Yeah. Fran, as a founder, I'm intrigued to hear about your journey and the role that networking's played in your success.
I mean, when I reflect, I think it was absolutely pivotal for everything that came afterwards, really, because my background, like many founders, I think was in a completely different sector. I worked for basically NGOs, and I had absolutely no business acumen. And I think with that, when you're creating an idea, it basically is such a kind of small sort of concept, and then you've got to turn it into this bigger concept, which is obviously the business itself. And I think you have huge amounts of imposter syndrome that comes with that, and you need to create this like incredible support network that comes with, you know, pulling you up all the time, holding you accountable, but giving you the skills and the resource to actually crack on and do it. And you have to do everything. You have to be a jack of all trades. You have to be a marketer, be really a whiz at your finances, look at pitching and getting investment and money. And I think having a really powerful network can really sort of enable you to just really succeed and thrive, actually.
Yeah, and Ollie, it's something that you and I have both seen firsthand through helping people on our accelerator program. As many other entrepreneur accelerator programs do, they emphasize the need for networking. You personally are one of the most, and actually this is an award, is the most inspiring mentor in the UK we have in the room. I think a round of applause. Yeah. I said distinguished panel for a reason. So I guess as part of that, can you explain how you facilitate, and you mentioned briefly, but how you facilitate some of those networking opportunities and how people can leverage those to make sure that they're getting those right connections? What's the key to that?
Yeah, I think firstly, picking up on a couple of points that Fran made there actually is that I think when we think about networking sometimes, there's this air of being an entrepreneur and a business owner that you lose your ability to say, I haven't got a clue what I'm doing. And so when you think about networking and picking up with people, there's a nervousness there that you might have to be honest with somebody and say, I haven't got this nailed and therefore I need your support. And I think one of the strengths that I see in networking actually is the more honest you are, the more aligned the support will be, and then the faster your growth will come. And so I think there's something really honest there about when you go out networking and when you meet people and when you forge those relationships, that you can start to be a little bit more honest about the adventure that you're on and the challenges that you face. And I think that's where I see the connection bit coming in, Ellie, and the power of that is actually when I meet somebody that's got a particular challenge and I can introduce them to somebody, there's already a level of trust that comes with that relationship. It's almost like there's already a vetting process gone. This person isn't going to judge you for the reality of where you are in your journey. And I think having people within your network that can be those trusted confidants and can introduce you to people that they feel can add value, it's so important. I think it's imperative to that growth.
I just want to pause on that point because I think if you reflect back on the last couple of days or indeed the last week, how many networking events have you been to where you've actually asked a trusted person of you to introduce you to 3 people in the room? I think that's such a simple tip to take away where it's like, Ollie, actually, who do you know here who's useful for me to speak to? And I think it's something that we regularly forget to do. We just go into a room and suddenly are thrown into the mix or hide against the walls, as Ollie might say. But Fran, so as Accelerator alumni, I know you've seen the benefit of some of those connections directly. Can you share about how some of those experiences, particularly on the NatWest Accelerator, have helped you expand your network?
Well, I mean, this guy I can vouch he's a bloody good mentor because I had Ollie mentor me right at the beginning. So it was 2018, I think, which is frightening. It was 6 years ago. But actually, when I joined the NatWest Accelerator, I knew that this was exactly what I needed because I was pre-startup. I actually had investment at this point, but it was still a kind of idea at this point in time. And I remember just procrastinating big time in terms of launching it into the world. Like I was actually quite fearful. And it was actually Ollie who kind of pointed that out to me, that my procrastination was actually my fear of actually failure, basically. And I was thinking, you know what, it was completely right. And I was really spending months and months trying to get this thing into the world. And it wasn't because I was lazy. It was actually just because I was just terrified and scared. But I think that the whole network itself around, like, you've got this whole cohort who are all completely different businesses, but there's something magic about the whole group. And there's this thing about serendipity, I think, that you kind of throw something out there to somebody and you have somebody who's completely unrelated to your business. It might be coffee or it might be peanut butter. And actually you have these huge connections which actually you're all working towards the same goal, whether it's sharing retail listings or contacts. And I think it is quite a magical accelerator program actually for people who wanting to start out a business.
There'll be plenty of people, I'm sure, sat in the room going, oh, I'm not part of an accelerator, nor maybe can you be, depending on what it is that you do, especially if you're an entrepreneur, as we call it. So I guess a good point is, what are the practical tips for people in the room to effectively leverage and build their networks?
I think the first thing is we have a phrase that says you don't sell to the room, you sell through the room. In the same way, you don't get business from networking, you get business through networking. Because actually, if you build relationships, that everybody you meet becomes a referrer or a potential referrer for who you are and what you do. And I think if you lead with what you do, you miss out on who you are, and that's the bit that connects people. So I think, one of the best tips is to think about the people that you're meeting and who they are as individuals. And, you'll have heard all of the stories about, people, wear watches or wear red because they can stand out. And that is, in its own right, a good way of networking, right? You become memorable rather than blending in with the audience. And people, if you have 100 conversations, who you're going to remember? Maybe the person in the red shirt. So it's an interesting way of thinking about it. There's lots of different things you can do at networking that allow you to gain an opportunity to contact somebody later. I think one of the biggest pitfalls I see, Ellie, actually is no follow through. People that go out, take your business card, and you never hear from them again. You might as well not have spoken to them. And so if you get a business card, follow up, even if it's just, it was really nice to meet you at that event. Just wanted to check in and say hello again. Here I am in your network, and look forward to, hearing all about everything that goes on in your world. So sometimes it's the little things that have a big difference. The other thing I've realised actually is that there are lots of watchers. And what I mean by that is, networking, we think about it being a physical thing, but LinkedIn is a really powerful network as well. And what I've realised on LinkedIn is there are lots and lots of watchers. These people don't comment, they don't like, they don't do anything that makes you realise they're there. And then you bump into them in real life and they're like, oh yeah, that thing you did was amazing. I was like, I didn't even know you saw that. And so showing up, being consistent, being there, whether that's physically or online, again, it pays dividends. And you get people that we know are serial networkers. They go to everything, everywhere. But the reality is everybody knows who they are. And that can be a really positive thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to delve a little bit deeper into that follow-up then, do you have any top tips in terms of how you make the most out of networking and the follow-up?
Well, I mean, just on the follow-up and using opportunities, I think, just talk to everybody, and by that, I mean, I met my seed investor on an aeroplane, and we were just sat there, going off into Europe somewhere. I won't say where because it's actually where manufacturing's are, but it was just a really amazing conversation that we had. He was really interested in what I was doing, had daughters. I'm obviously doing period care, so he was really interested in that. And gave me a business card, and I basically followed up with it, and he's invested 3 times in 3 subsequent rounds. And actually, he's built his network with that as well. And what's bizarre about this story that I only learnt about maybe a month ago is that on the same flight, there was 3 other shareholders who were at the back of the plane who are now part of the business as well. So it's the power of serendipity, really.
Yeah. That flight paid off, right?
And it was an EasyJet flight.
Well, so there you go. That's the tip. Nice. I guess going back to what I said at the start, I'm sure a lot of people view networking a bit like public speaking or going to the gym for the first time in a while. Not super enjoyable. So for those people in the room that perhaps feel that way, how do you think they should approach networking? For example, you met someone on a plane. You wouldn't think that you're going there to network, right?
I think that's the thing. The gym analogy is quite a good one because nobody really enjoys going, but actually feel pretty good afterwards. And I think that was the thing about the NatWest Accelerator for me. I used to hate going to the events when they were coming up, and I look in my diary and be like, there's a million other things that I could be doing. But you would always come away just feeling 100 times more positive. If you're feeling a bit crap that day, it's actually really nice to be around people who may be feeling the same or pep you up. That's the whole point of a network, is that support mechanism.
Yeah, I think networking happens everywhere and all of the time. And I think your example of being on the plane, it demonstrates that. Right? You're sitting down next to somebody and they get interested in what you do. And ultimately, you don't know who they are or what they do or whether they're a valuable contact or not. So everybody you speak to is a networking opportunity. Wearing your brand is a really great way of doing that. People often ask questions. And I was on holiday in Portugal recently, actually, and I was wearing a brand and somebody stopped me in a market and said, I really like that brand, where's it from? And we had a conversation, and I was telling them a little bit about some of the stuff that I do, and they were like, oh yeah, I've got somebody actually who lives out in Portugal who's from the UK. I'd love to introduce you. And anyway, I looked this person up, and they're an Amazon bestseller author, coach out in Portugal that does all sorts of weird and wonderful things. And you just go, I was literally walking through a market with a brand on, and that was a way of networking in its own right. So I think that mentality around the fact that we're all networking all of the time. Networking's a funny term. And if you're one of the introverts among us, just reframe what networking means to you. It doesn't mean that you go and speak to 100 people. It might mean that you go and speak to 1 or 2 people in depth. You can always tell who the other introverts are in the room as well because they'll be hugging the wall. What I've realised about my own style is I'm a really good second person. So if there's one person already there, I'm a really good second person, and I can entice a third person in to create a more rounded and supported conversation. So that reflective piece about, if you feel a certain way about networking, to consider why you feel that way and where does that come from. And similar to you, actually, I think there's something really interesting and pure about being a parent and seeing your own belief systems rub off on your children, but also how you cater and go, actually, no, get right in there, because actually that's what we want for ourselves as well. And I learn from my daughter all of the time. She is definitely first man in all the time. She's the first person in the room, straight into the middle, entices everybody else to do the dancing, and that's how I inspire to be in networking. So yeah, I'll see you at a networking event soon, first man in.
And you definitely have to have that voice in your head to persist you on. And yeah, mindset is key. You've both shared some really practical tips already, and we're going to open out to questions in the audience in just a moment. We've got time for a few, which is good news. So as you start thinking about that, I guess I wanted to ask, we've got people in the room who in various different capacities are interested in entrepreneurship in some way. And are there any key resources or networks that you would recommend based on both of your experiences for those interested to attend?
I mean, I think we are so lucky for those of you that live in Bristol, because Bristol's just full of amazing events. Like, it doesn't have to be a big event like this, like a big conference, but there's smaller kind of business breakfast meetings. It could be quite intimate. And actually, we're just a really friendly community in Bristol. So I think you don't have to be so terrified, is what I would say.
Yeah, I think speak to other people. I know it's networking in its own right, but if you speak to other people, they'll tell you what not to go to, and they'll tell you why they wouldn't recommend going there. And usually it's because it's networking done in a particular way. So I would find networks or opportunities to network that are a little bit more informal, that allow for relationships to flourish, that provide an alternative approach. I've seen some really good examples, Ellie, of where there's been questions on the screen, and the questions have been, where would you go on your next holiday? Or where's the most inspiring talk that you went to? These tiny little conversation starters that help you to get to know each other, and you can keep some of them in your pocket as well. But yeah, when I think about networking, I think the first thing is just getting out and doing it. It's usually there's lots of excuses not to go, but once you're in the room, you usually find that actually it's really, really powerful. And I can't stress enough, actually, that the difference between being successful and unsuccessful when it comes to business is the people that you've got in your corner, the people that you can access in terms of support, and the further you go along that journey, the more important that it becomes.
No, thank you. That's 2 good pieces of advice. We are incredibly, incredibly lucky here. I'm going to open up to questions. Does anyone have any? Cool, at the front, please. I don't know if it's working. Here's a man.
Thank you very much. I normally hate people who kind of start a question off by an observation. However, I'm going to do it. I think when Gary Player was asked about luck, he said, it's funny, the harder I train, the luckier I become. And I think a lot today, people have talked about the luck that has got them to where they are. But I think if you use networking as an example, you can increase your service area of luck by showing up to stuff like this. I do actually have a question actually as well for the most inspiring mentor in the UK. Earlier on, someone suggested, on your journey, you should try and find a mentor. What should one look for in a mentor? And also, as a sort of secondary question, how do you approach and ask someone to be your mentor?
Yeah, so I think in terms of what you should look for, testimonials. I think it's such an important part of. There's lots of coaches and mentors out there. There's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them. So how do you find a good one? And I think you trust the crowd, trust the peer-led approach and the referral. There's lots of really good mentoring platforms out there. So at the moment, obviously, there's a Help to Grow scheme that's happening, and you can find mentorship through that. There's lots of people giving their time through there, which is actually how I won the award. I volunteered for that and ended up winning. I was mentoring a funeral service actually in Wales, really randomly. Never thought I'd be mentoring a funeral service, but here we are, and it led to, and I think that's networking in its own right. So yeah, I think the first thing is look at the testimonials and look at the track record of what they've done and try and identify, does this sound like your type of person? Do they have the skill and experience that you think will add value to your journey? I think the other part is be clear in what you're looking for. I see lots of examples where people go, I'm looking for a mentor, and you go, that's nice, what for? And they're like, I've got no idea. Well, is it well-being? Is it business development? Is it something else? Is it holistic? Like, what are you actually looking for and why? And I think the clearer you can be on that question, the more likely you are to find the right connection. And then the second part of your question, sorry?
It was how you asked.
Just ask. It's that simple. I think ultimately you miss all of the shots you don't take. And ultimately, by putting yourself out there and by asking the question, people can only say no. And if they say no, that's fine. But what it has done is put you on their radar as somebody that's willing and ready to get stuck in and willing and ready to ask for support. And so clearly, when you look at some of these people, they may well be busy. And I always think that if you get a no, it's a no for now, not a no forever. And what I mean about the watchers sometimes is if I get one of those messages, you're on my list of one to watch. I want to know what this person's doing and where they're heading, and maybe the journey together might come a little bit later. But yeah, if you don't ask, you don't get. There's no harm in asking.
And I think one of the things that's really important to me and some of the things that I work on is who's seen as a mentor. So there will be some people who have like a big distinguished list of I've helped these people, but actually there are people out there who have incredible skill sets, particularly those from underrepresented backgrounds that actually are really eager to be approached about mentoring, but a lot of people don't consider them as an option. But just look at someone's experience in with business, not necessarily even them as a mentor, because that's how a reciprocal relationship starts to build, and you can help someone else as well as them help you. So that's for me a really important point. And I'm going to close there because I know that Greg is very keen for the football at 5 o'clock. We've got to be out of here. But just to wrap up, so I'd like to thank Fran and Ollie for their experiences, their insights. It's really valuable to have you both from very different perspectives be able to shed light. And it's really powerful to see how networking has played a role in both of your experiences so far. It's really important to think about how you reframe networking within your mind. I think that's my biggest takeaway from this session, even for myself. Just remind myself that networking can happen anywhere, even on a plane, right? And it does take different forms. Sometimes it is unstructured things where you don't least expect it. But likewise, there are structured ways like membership organisations, various events. So Ollie runs a business called Humans, which is an incredible business where at Square Club every Monday of the month.
Every third Monday.
Third Monday of the month, he runs sessions. I run an audience with our NatWest Accelerator, and accelerated programs are really great for that type of thing. So for anyone interested in the NatWest Accelerator, please do connect with me. My name is there on the screen. It's with Ellie with a Y. Feel free to pop me a message on LinkedIn. Essentially, it's a fully funded 6-month program where we bring in a cohort of entrepreneurs where they get access to one-to-one coaching, a series of workshops and events, including things like networking. So you start to get comfortable in a really safe space. You get use of a co-working space, which here is literally a 5-minute walk from Bristol Temple Meads, which we're super lucky to have. And most importantly, you get that network immediately of around 100 other ambitious, like-minded entrepreneurs who are all looking to level up their business. So it's an incredible place to be with incredible people. And I feel so lucky, so lucky to be part of that. You can search NatWest Accelerator online, or please, as I say, do just feel free to come and find me, pop me a message. Application window is open for a little while, but I do recommend that you get something in. It's a really great place to build that network, and I just want to reiterate the fact that the people in the room here can truly transform your experience as a person, as a leader, how you show up in the world. And so take every single opportunity. Business is about people, and the people in the room here have those opportunities, have those connections that will help you on your journey. So I'm going to finish on that point. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you to EntreComp for having us. And again, big thank you to Fran.